Why can't I move on? What is wrong with me? Why is life so hard since I experienced this loss? What is wrong with me that I cannot stop thinking about this person? If you have ever asked yourself these questions or ones that sound a lot like them, I think today's episode may have some answers for you. And I want to start by telling you the most important thing first. There's nothing wrong with you. Our brains create detailed mental maps of the people we love, their voice, their habits, the particular way they answered the phone, and when that person is gone from our lives, these maps do not suddenly disappear. For years after my husband Mark passed away, there were still moments when something would happen, and my first instinct was to reach for the phone and call him. For just a split second, my brain forgot, and then reality returned. If you have lost someone, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That is not a sign that you are broken. That is a sign that you loved someone deeply, and that is exactly what today's conversation is about. Welcome to Beyond the Glass Slipper. I am Cindy, and I am so glad you are here. This is the Conversations with Cindy series, where we step into the topics that matter most to women navigating life's transitions with greater intention, awareness, and purpose. Today, we are talking about grief, not just the grief that follows the death of a loved one, but the grief that can follow any significant loss. The loss of a marriage, a friendship, your health, your independence, or even a future you once imagined but never got to live. It is clear that grief is not limited to death, and grief shows up anytime we lose someone, something, or some version of ourselves that mattered deeply. If any of those losses sound familiar, I want you to hear this. You are not alone. For decades, most of us were taught that grief followed a predictable path. You may remember hearing about the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. That model was introduced by psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in 1969, and for many years, it was treated as a kind of roadmap for loss. Here is what modern grief research now tells us. These stages were never meant to be a checklist. Kubler-Ross herself said so, but somewhere along the way, we turned them into a timeline. And when our grief did not follow that expected sequence, many of us quietly wondered what we were doing wrong. Contemporary grief psychology has largely moved away from the stage-based models altogether. Because grief, it turns out, is not linear. It does not follow stages. It does not run on a schedule, and there is no finish line. No two human beings share the same fingerprint. We all know that. And what we need to learn is that no two grief journeys are the same either. Your grief is as unique as you are. So if the 5 stages are no longer the standard, what has replaced them? One of the most widely respected frameworks in grief research today is called the dual process model, developed by researchers Margaret Strobel and Hank Schunk. I hope I pronounced both of their names correctly. The idea is beautifully simple. Healthy grieving is not about moving steadily through stages towards some final destination. Instead, it involves oscillating between 2 things. On one side, you lean into the grief. You cry, you feel the loss, you honor the sadness. On the other side, you turn toward living. You make dinner, you laugh at something, you make a plan. And then you oscillate back, and there is no right rhythm, no correct balance, just movement over time. I found this on WPSU Grief on Facebook and had to share it. They also noted that it is important to take breaks from grief. This is not an inconsistency. This is not a weakness. This is actually healthy grieving and what it looks like. I want you to hear what that means for you specifically. If you have a good day, let's say last Tuesday, and felt guilty about it, please let that guilt go right now. Having a good day is not a betrayal. It is not proof that you did not love enough. It is your nervous system doing exactly what it is supposed to do. Grief and joy are not opposites. They can travel together, and learning that may be one of the most freeing realizations you will ever have. There's a second major shift in modern grief psychology that I think is equally important. For a long time, the goal of grief was described as detachment, letting go, moving on. Today, there is a framework. It's called continuing bonds theory, and that tells us something very different. Healthy grieving is not about leaving someone behind. It's about finding new ways to carry them forward. Their values, their humor, the lessons they taught you without even realizing they were teaching you anything. The goal is not to stop loving someone who is gone. The goal is to integrate that love into who you are becoming. Healing does not mean erasing the past. Healing means growing your life strong enough to carry it forward. I want to spend a moment on something that does not get talked about nearly enough. We can grieve a living person, not because they died, but because they changed. Researchers call this an ambiguous loss, and it is one of the most disorienting forms of grief there is. It happens when someone you love is still physically present, but the person you knew, the person you built your life around, is no longer there in some way. This is the reality for many women caring for a spouse or a parent with dementia. You are not widowed, you are not divorced, but the person sitting across from you is not quite the person you fell in love with or grew up loving. I am experiencing this right now with my Aunt Emma, who is 99. She likes to think that she will return to the golf course she once belonged to and enjoy a round or two, which she did until she was 92. And I have the videos of her taking a full swing with her driver to prove it. I too wish she would be returning to the driving range, and in her mind she may, but in my mind, I know that will never happen. And the change in her mental and physical status has been a great loss for me. Because there is no funeral, there's no ceremony, there's no socially recognized moment of loss, many women grieve this quietly and alone, wondering why they are struggling so much when the person is still right there. The grief is real, it is valid, and it deserves to be named. The same is true for grief after a divorce or the end of a significant relationship. Unlike the death of a loved one, the loss comes with complicated feelings. Sometimes there is anger, sometimes relief, sometimes shame, sometimes all of those at the same time. And unlike bereavement, our culture rarely offers a structured period of mourning for it. But you are still mourning not just the person, but the life you shared, the identity you built together, and the future you had planned. That is a profound loss, and it is allowed to take time. Here is something else that I think explains why so many women over 55 feel the weight of grief so heavily. Research from the National Aging Research Institute shows that repeated exposure to loss does not necessarily make us more resilient. Instead, losses, they compound. By the time we are in our 50s and 60s, many of us have experienced the death of parents, siblings, close friends, and in some cases, a spouse. We have navigated possibly a divorce, career endings, health changes, and the loss of the roles that we once enjoyed and that once defined us. Each loss adds to what we are already carrying. So if you feel like your grief is heavier than it should be, or that a newer loss has somehow reopened an older one, that is a very normal, very human response to a life fully and deeply lived. I want to say something honest here because I have lived this. When you are in the middle of grief and someone offers you a 12-week program or a 6-week program or a weekend that promises to help you move on, it can feel like a lifeline. I looked into many of those programs myself, and while community coaching and support can absolutely help, I want you to be cautious of anyone who promises a predictable outcome for a deeply personal and unpredictable experience. Here is the thing about those programs. When the 12 weeks end or the weekend comes to the end and you still feel pain, many women walk away feeling like they failed, and now they are carrying some additional grief and shame. So you did not fail. Grief simply does not follow a prescribed program, and healing cannot be purchased on a payment plan. So what we can actually do, here are 5 things I hope you will carry with you, maybe starting today. Number 1, release the timeline. There is no timeline for healing and no expiration date on grief. If someone in your life is implying otherwise, that says more about their discomfort than your progress. Number 2, stop comparing your journey to someone else's. Your grief is yours alone. What helped your friend, your sister, or neighbor may not be what you need, and that is completely normal. Number 3, give yourself permission to have a good day. Remember the dual process model. Oscillating towards living is not a betrayal. It is healthy, and it is also very much allowed. Number 4, find ways to carry what you have lost forward. Share stories, speak their name, honor the values and the love that shaped you. Healing does not mean letting go. Number 5, take one small step towards living again, not a giant leap, one step, a phone call, a walk, lunch with a friend, one step at a time. Before we close, I want to say this clearly and without hesitation. If your grief is interfering with your daily life, if you are feeling hopeless, if you are struggling to get through the day, or if the weight simply feels too heavy to carry alone, please reach out for professional support. A licensed therapist or grief counselor is not a luxury. For many women, it is the most important investment they can ever make in themselves and in the life that is still ahead of them. Psychology Today has a therapist directory searchable by specialty and location. The link is in the show notes. Seeking help is not a sign of weakness. It may be one of the bravest, most self-honoring decisions you will ever make. Grief is not something we get over. It is something we learn to carry. And there is nothing wrong with you if that is taking longer than anyone else expected. Your grief is as unique as your fingerprint. There is no standard roadmap. There is no finish line. There is no formula. There is only your journey, your pace, and your heart finding its way forward, one small step at a time. Thank you for being here today. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with a woman who might want or need to hear it. Follow Beyond the Glass Slipper on Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. Visit beyondtheglassslipper.com. That's our website, and join us inside the Encore Women's Circle. And if you have a shared story, a personal experience that might inspire another woman to step boldly into her Encore years with greater purpose and possibility, I would love to hear from you. My email address is beyondtheglassslipper55@gmail.com. Until next time, remember that your encore is still being written. And always remember, stay curious.